right, so we're getting underway here, and I mean, Matt, we're going to do a bit of a change up. I think to the formula here. I know we're only 3 episodes in, but you know what? Fuck it. Typically, how we want to do this is what we bring somebody on, we conduct an interview, ask some questions, shoot the shit. But every once in a while, like there's something I think that is just so unbelievably exciting, or maybe, I don't know, sometime there might be something happening in pop culture, or maybe there will be something that happens Bitcoin, crypto, or political wise that we just kind of jump on and just have a quick chat together, right? And you know what? One of those things I think is happening this week. So I don't know if you know this. I don't consider myself a gamer really by any means. I mean, I never really played video games as a kid outside of like the obligatory Super Smash Brothers on N64 or playing Madden, I guess. And then, I mean, you and I think you remember this back in high school. Like you and I actually really got into Guitar Hero for some time, yeah?
Do I remember it? Dude, that was my identity for a few years.
Yeah, probably sad to say. I think there was at one point, God, whose birthday party was it? We went to Dave and Buster's, like that big adult arcade. And was that you that was just like breaking all the records on the Guitar Hero at the arcade?
I don't know if I was breaking records, but I could tickle the old ivories, if you know what I mean.
I don't know. I think like in a past life, I would have been, or I don't know, maybe not a past life, but in an alternate life, if there is a multiverse, there is a version of me that isn't just a closet karaoke performer, but is the front man on some big stage, something. He's the front man of a band, right? I don't know.
Pat Halen.
Yeah, there you go. Pat Van Halen. I don't know. I probably should have been a performer. But anyways, so I started to actually get a little bit into gaming a few years ago. And I'll tell you how. Now, my wife, she knows that I'm a huge Pokemon fan. I grew up, caught 151 Pokemon. You fast forward a couple of years, and now there's something like 1,000 Pokemon. And there was a new Pokemon game coming out a few years back. And I travel constantly for work. So my wife got together with different members of our family. They all pitched in. And they got me a Nintendo Switch just so I could play that new Pokemon game on the Nintendo Switch. And you know what? Like, I didn't realize how like crazy gaming had gotten. Like, the graphics and the quality of the games and whatever it is that you get on a Nintendo Switch, like even just carrying it on an airplane with you, infinitely better than like the couple 3-pixel thing, like the 3-pixel Pikachu that I used to have when I was a little kid. It just absolutely blew me away. So you're probably not familiar with this, but one of the things that happened over the last couple of years in crypto is there ended up becoming this bit of a merger, and it's kind of gone the wayside lately, but there ended up being this bit of a merger between gaming and crypto. There came this concept of pay to play, or I think we called it play to earn in crypto, where basically they would create these little games. The most famous one was called Axie Infinity, which was basically these little Pokemon monsters, which were NFTs. That company went on and sold about $1 billion worth of these little NFT Pokemon monsters. And you would earn money in game, basically earning crypto, literally just by playing the game. So I said, like, okay, fine. You know what? I'm going to get into gaming, because if there is going to be this convergence of crypto and gaming, why the hell not? God help me. So I stupidly one day, I was looking through the game catalog on Nintendo Switch, and I was like, okay, you know what? Let's just find something familiar. So there was the Pokemon I was playing. And then I saw there was this Zelda game. And I was like, oh yeah, you know what? I remember Ocarina of Time from when I was like 10, 11 years old. And God, I think I played that nonstop for about a week. I remember my parents yelling at me, not being allowed to do anything because I was just constantly playing this Ocarina of Time. So I was like, yeah, you know what? I'll try that Zelda game. Why the hell not? I can't tell you how blown away I was. It was Zelda Breath of the Wild. I think I started playing that maybe 2 years ago. And at that point, like the game had already been out for 3 or 4 years, I guess. I can't believe how unbelievably radical gaming has changed and how like unbelievable that game was compared to like the Ocarina of Time I played as a kid. Did you play it?
Yeah, I still have it. I actually fired it up maybe a year ago because I never actually beat it because I was never an N64 guy growing up. I was always PlayStation, and then eventually I moved into Xbox when I hit like 8th grade. My parents got me Halo, and that was sort of like
you grow out of Nintendo, right? Like you grow out of Mario. Like I remember, like I had an Xbox, or I shouldn't say my brother had an Xbox, and I played Madden every once in a while on that when I was a kid. But outside of that, I never played any other video games. But you just grow out of Nintendo, right?
I mean, I still have my Super Nintendo plugged in over there, so I can't say I ever. Yeah, I can't say I ever grew out of it. I'm always like my parents when I was growing up always were trying to throw shit out, and I'm not a big thrower outer. Some would say I'm a hoarder of certain things. I really refuse to sell or throw out my video games. The only ones I've really given away or sold are all the old sports games because I'm never going to go back and play like Madden 2005. I'm never going to go back and play Dave Mira Freestyle BMX. So I had that game. Or Jeremy, what the hell is his name? Motocross 98. Like, I have all those games.
I remember one that I actually played for a little bit. It was the Tony Hawk game.
Oh, yeah.
It was like Tony Hawk Pro Skater. And like all of a sudden, out of nowhere, and I don't know if it's because of that or because of the X Games. I don't know which made which popular. But I mean, it's like out of nowhere, all of a sudden the X Games and this game just became the biggest things that any kid could talk about back then.
It was Tony Hawk. I'll tell you right now, it wasn't the X Games. The X Games became bigger because of Tony Hawk. That game was like a pretty pivotal game in general, not just for skateboarding, but for video games, because brought sort of this like counterculture to video games and made it cool to an extent. I mean, those games still play pretty well if you ever go back and play them. That made me into like a skateboarder, aka I bought a $300 Birdhouse Tony Hawk skateboarder. I went to FDR once and nearly broke my ankle.
Oh God! You mean FDR in Philly?
Yeah.
You know they still have that skate park there?
Yeah, man. It's pretty like it's like a monument now in the city. But I went there one time. I was like so overwhelmed by how much I was like just standing and like skating around. There was like people my age. There was like grown men going on like the half pipe and everything like that. I was like, I should not be here.
So because the X Games got so big, you probably remember this. Like my brother and I, when we were kids, we used to race motorcycles. So we really got into motocross, which is, I mean, that's how I ended up. I screwed up my wrist. That's why my arm, basically my left arm, just doesn't work at all. But I mean, it's profound what type of impact gaming, because if it truly was that Tony Hawk game that made the X Games big, I mean, thanks Tony Hawk, I can blame you for the reason why my left arm doesn't work, right?
It's his fault. You can blame him directly.
It's entirely his fault. It had nothing to do with me trying to do something stupid on a motorcycle, right?
Nah, I mean, it's like the chicken and the egg. He got me into skateboarding, and I was skating over my friend's house one day, and I was going down a pretty big hill. I hit a little tiny pebble, it was probably the size of a pea, and I fell off my skateboard and like rolled under a car that was driving and almost got run over. So that was, thank you, Tony. That was pretty shitty of you.
Well, anyways, I mean, I think it's just kind of a testament to how over the last, and I was just completely oblivious to this, but I mean, over the last 15 or 20 years, how important gaming, I guess, has become, right? And that's where, I mean, I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, but I mean, you know what? Like part of this podcast, we want to talk about shit that makes us happy. I can't even tell you how many times I still turn on Zelda. Like if I'm flying on a plane or even if I'm just home alone, my wife's traveling or something in the evening, I will turn on that Zelda Breath of the Wild and I will just play for hours. That game is just unbelievably fantastic.
There's nothing embarrassing about it, to be honest with you. I mean, I take some time out of my day every now and then.
Because I didn't play it. I feel like I should be. I didn't play games as a kid. Now I get,
who cares?
I'm a nerd.
I didn't play hockey when I was a kid. I play hockey 3 times a week. Now I'm 34. You know?
God, I played hockey every day as a kid, and I haven't played for the last 5 years. Our lives
it's like it. Yeah, I was a fat nerd. You were a hockey player. Now you're a fat nerd, and I'm.
Well, hey, I'm working on that with Oliver. I'm not going to be the fat nerd in my corner.
I'm just kidding. I'm still a fat nerd. I'm just, I also play sports now. But
well, I'm the athletic jock that now plays video games. So I mean, as
you're stealing my culture.
Oh, I'm culturally appropriating gaming.
Yeah, I don't like jocks stealing my shit, dude. So why don't you back off?
I'll try my best. No, but anyways, I mean, what's really kind of exciting is as of this moment, we're only a few days away from the release of what will be the next Zelda installment, Tears of the Kingdom. Now, this is supposed, I mean, I only learned about this a year or so ago. I didn't even know they were making a sequel to this Zelda Breath of the Wild. And like, when I was playing Breath of the Wild, I did not realize how profound the impact of that game was. Like, apparently, most people consider it, if not one of the potentially the very best games that has like ever been made. And I don't know if any of our viewers have ever played Breath of the Wild, or I don't know if they're even going to care about listening to this episode, but if you haven't yet, you must. It's just astounding. And apparently, when that game released in 2017, it was like one of the first games on the Nintendo Switch. And now, this sequel coming out 6 years later, it's basically using everything, all of the assets, all of the map and everything from Breath of the Wild, which was phenomenal. And they're basically just upping the ante. I mean, have you seen the trailer or any of the advertisements for this game?
Yeah, no, I've been watching some of the stuff that's come out. I didn't ever get a chance to play Breath of the Wild. I played pretty much every other game though. Growing up on Super Nintendo N64, my brother let me borrow his 3DS. You ever play 3DS? It was the old handheld game system.
Yeah,
He let
yeah,
me
yeah.
play. He let me play. God, I can't remember the name of it now. It's embarrassing. The one game on there was sick. And I finally beat that maybe like a year ago.
Well, it took you 20 years to beat the game.
Yes, yeah. And now I'm like I'm trying to get not trying to get back into gaming. I just am because my life is empty and meaningless, and I'm trying to find some fulfillment in my characters killing their enemies. Uh, no, I like my life, but I think I want to get back into it. And Switch is something I haven't really gotten back into. But my brother has one, and I'm hoping that he'll get it and I can just steal it from him. But no, I watched the trailer. It looks amazing. I mean, I like the sort of way that they stylize the game, like the cell shading almost, sort of reminiscent of some older games that I played growing up. But it looks phenomenal. I mean, I've read a little bit about the gameplay and some of the changes. I like the open world style of games that have been coming out. Like I don't know if you haven't gotten back into gaming too much, but there's a game that I play, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's called Elden Ring. You heard of
So I've
that?
heard of that, but I mean, again, I literally just started to get into gaming. So like I started with that Pokemon game a few years back. And like, first off, it just astounded me that there's Pokemon even running around in the wild, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
now it's not just walking through the high grass and then you get the like whatever that the noise was that popped up and you're like, damn it, now I have to go battle a Pokemon. They're just there sitting in the wild and you can just catch them if you want to, or you can avoid them if you don't want to. So like that first astounded me. And then I started playing all these other games, and I never did the Elden Ring because, I mean, I only picked up gaming because of traveling, and I started to run out of stuff to download on Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever on my iPad. So the Nintendo Switch was perfect because, I mean, I can't take a PlayStation with me on a plane, right? Um, so I never played the Elden Ring. The only thing I know about that is Elon Musk was tweeting about it, and he thinks it's like the greatest video game ever or something, right?
It's so it's incredible. First of all, like the open world design, the graphics are amazing, the gameplay. It's the hardest game I've ever played in my life.
What's so
Like,
hard about
dude, it like doesn't pull punches. It's like you're very if you go up to like an enemy that you should in a place you shouldn't be, you will get killed. Like it's not like that's my beef with some of the games that have been coming out in recent memories. I feel like they're too easy for the most part.
it? Yeah.
Elden Ring has one difficulty setting, and it's like fuck you. If you're not ready for this, you're gonna die.
But,
Um,
so is it? So it's kind of like, I mean, because that happened to me the first time I played Breath of the Wild. Because like like whenever you play video games when we were kids, there's like this natural progression to the game, right? Like okay, and I'm just going to use Ocarina of Time as the example. Like you wake up, you're a little kid. Some giant talking tree tells you you're destined to save the world, and then you go in the tree, you get a sword, and I don't know, the enemies are simple and easy, and you get a cute little slingshot and you can shoot little spiders, right? But then you fast forward and you're fighting gigantic dragons as an adult with a giant sledgehammer, more or less. Like, that's one of the things that screwed me in Breath of the Wild. I mean, I remember when I started to play the game, like at first I was thinking, you know what, I don't know where to go. And then I started like going on the Google asking, well, what do I do once the tutorial for Breath of the Wild is over? And it basically said, just go anywhere. So I was like, okay, fine. So I went anywhere. At that point in the game, I think I had like a wooden stick and like a wooden shield. So like no meaningful weapon. And I start running across this big open field, no idea where I am because the map doesn't even show you until like you go to the towers. So I started running to a tower, and all of a sudden this music starts coming on, and I see this like machine looking thing. It ends up being a bad person or a bad thing called a guardian, and it starts lighting up blue and purple. So I run at it because, you know what, I'm going to beat this thing with a stick. Very quickly realized that was a horrible decision because not only does the stick basically do 0 damage to it, but that machine shoots a giant laser, and I died within about 30 seconds. Really great start to my Zelda Breath of the Wild career. But I learned the hard way, don't do that. So I started the game over and went a different way. But like that seems to be a new trend. Like you make the games, I guess it's like that open world thing. But the problem is whenever you're doing this open world, you end up running into situations you shouldn't, which I guess is
right. Well, that's a good life lesson, man. You know, like, you know, life isn't always linear. You don't start off with like a general power level, like, you know, escalation to get you to a certain point. I mean, I love the open world games for exactly that reason, because there is the chance that, you know, maybe
you and I, straight white guys, I mean, we start out with a privilege now, don't we?
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, there's different difficulty settings in life. I'm probably on an easy mode right now. Feels like it's generally getting harder and harder as the years go by. But no, I like the open world games. I think are some of my favorite, and that is something that I grew up playing with. Like, I don't know if you ever got into like the Final Fantasy series.
No, I know the name, but like I said, I never played games.
Those were generally more open world as well, not as much as say like an Elden Ring or what it looks like maybe Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom will be. There's sort of like a set things you have to do in order, but you can generally roam free and go different places, and you know, do side quests, and that's sort of the games that I love to play, are where I'm not really, you know, it's not holding my hand necessarily. I will say Elden Ring sort of goes in the other direction where I have no fucking clue what I'm supposed to be doing right now whenever I play. I started playing it like a year ago. Mm-hmm. I got really into it, and then I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing, and I got really tired of just running around and dying all the time, because literally everything will kill you in that game, even like the easy guys.
So basically, they just created Australia in video game form.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. It's like if you misstep, because these games, they're like, it's from the Dark Souls series. They're very heavily combat based, where it's not just like mashing buttons and killing things. You actually have to use like skill and like a strategy when you fight anything to a certain point. So if you screw up, you're dead. That's the type of stuff I think there's merit to that, but at a certain point, like I want to know what I'm supposed to do, and I don't like reading strategy guides or like the websites because I feel like it's cheating, but I might have to actually do that. But
I mean, I eventually found myself doing that a little bit with Breath of the Wild, because like at one point I kind of got tired of pretty much the same thing you went through. Like I started climbing all the different hills and the mountains, and while everything was just beautiful, and like I figured out like, okay, you can get weapons from different monsters and you would go and you would fight them. Like it's very vague in giving you any direction. And I mean, as you progress through the game, like you said, you haven't played it, correct?
I haven't played Breath of the Wild yet, but I like go on Twitch a lot and watch a lot of gameplay.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's actually interesting. Like I didn't know until recently, like there's an entire industry of people watching each other play video games.
Oh yeah, dude.
Like it's fucking wild. Like,
it is.
The first time that I heard about this was a South Park episode a few years back, where Kyle was making fun of his little brother because his little brother wasn't playing a video game. He was just watching YouTubers playing a video game. And that whole concept just absolutely baffled me. Like, why the hell? Like, it's a video game. Why shouldn't I just go play the video game? Why the hell would I ever watch somebody else just play the video game? I mean, it just baffles my mind that there's this entire industry. Like, if you're playing a video game, like, fine, you're actually playing the game. But, like, why the fuck do people watch other people play video games?
So I have a theory, and it's similar to I think sports, right? Like those who can't do want to see others people do it essentially. Um, I've watched a little bit of gameplay for Zelda. I didn't really watch it to like watch the game. I just wanted to see what it looked like in preparation for this new one. There's a couple other games that I watched gameplay just because I was super interested in it and I wanted to see what it looked like before I bought it. Like most recently, I actually downloaded Twitch probably about a year and a half ago to watch gameplay for the new Resident Evil game, which is probably my favorite game series of all time now. So I wanted to see what it looked like. I ended up watching pretty much half the game being played through that just because I wanted to. Games like now are like movies, basically. So
and that's one of the that's a very good point. That's one of the things that blew my mind about Breath of the Wild. Like, even though I guess one of the criticisms for it from like real gamers is like, oh, there wasn't much story, and I get it because the story was told like 100 years in the past, and you were kind of just picking up pieces by collecting memories in the game. But I mean, the story was mind blowing, at least for me, because again, didn't play a video game. But I mean, they really are movies nowadays.
I mean, it's pretty apparent with The Last of Us just coming out on HBO. That was a video game, and it's the show basically played out like the game. The game was written like a movie with gameplay in between all like the critical scenes. So I mean, that's becoming sort of the norm now, more than just sort of these outliers that you would have back in the day. So that to me is sort of how I view people watching games, is they want to be entertained by sort of the game itself and not necessarily watching somebody play it. They are kind of viewing it through the lens of like a show almost for those types of games. For things like, I don't know if you've watched or heard of like League of Legends or Dota. Those are sort of like these multiplayer like arena type games where you get 4-on-4, 4 characters on each side, like racking up a kill count, and like the team with the most kills at the end of like the set allotted amount of time wins. That's pretty popular now on these streaming sites. Games like Fortnite. I played Fortnite. It's pretty fun. It's basically like an open world shooter.
Yeah, so I've heard of Fortnite. I mean, and actually, you know what I should say? I mean, after my wife bought me the Switch and I started playing it, so it was that Christmas. I was spending it with my my sister, her husband, and their kids. And they were telling me about all of the skins that they bought in this. Right now, the first thing I'm thinking is like, oh dear God, this is like a 10 and 11 and a 9-year-old, and they're playing a game about shooting people. I'm like, oh God, I've really become a boomer, haven't I? It's the same bullshit that my parents were yelling at me of as a kid at that age. But anyways, Rachel started telling me, my sister, about how like the kids were spending hundreds of dollars on credit cards for skins in the game. And I was like, okay, if you're doing that to buy in-game coins, right? Like this is one of the biggest things for crypto, right?
Yeah.
Like if each and every one of these games has their own unique currency internal to the game. Like the example I always like to use with this is World of Warcraft, right? Like you spend $100 to get in-game currency that becomes currency that you can trade and buy and sell within that RPG, right? Like that is all crypto is really doing to a certain extent. Like they're creating applications like on top of Ethereum. The currency is smart contract based, and regulatory and compliance issues aside, all you're doing is creating a currency for a local ecosystem, but allowing that currency not to be dictated and priced based on the goods and services in that ecosystem, but based on the demand for that currency from US dollar or whatever fiat currency for it. So that was one of my aha moments as to, okay, there is a huge overlap between crypto and gaming, which I actually didn't intend on talking about on this show. I was just going to come on and geek on about Zelda. I mean, I guess it makes perfect sense. Like,
it is pretty fascinating. I mean, Fortnite in particular, you're essentially, that's where the money is in that game, right? There's this thing called like Fortnite Crew where you can pay a monthly subscription to get you access to unlockable skins. So it's not even like you're getting them. You have to still like play, but it gives you like the access to get to that. And then there's the additional, they release all these skins, like regular cadence, and they're all sorts of different shit. Like and you can get like the V-Bucks, they call them, through playing. So I had like a V-Bucks, like V is in like,
okay, like the in-game currency.
Yeah. So I got cool skins. Like I got like John Cena, he's on there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got Spider-Man, I got Gambit from X-Men, Moon Knight from the Marvel series. There's all these like different. They do cross promotion with all these different things. Like there's Dragon Ball Z, uh, all sorts of stuff for people to spend money on. But it's
So basically, just
fascinating.
all the famous intellectual property out there, they just create things for it in game.
Yeah, there's a Rick and Morty crossover. I had
Oh,
Mr.
shit.
Meeseeks. Yeah, uh,
So you just have an infinite amount of different Mr. Beasts, yeah?
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and it's really interesting to me that that's so popular because all it is aesthetics. Like it doesn't help you play the game at all. Like you get these like either person skins that you can buy like emotes, like you can do like different dances. There's like the freaking whatchamacallit, Gangnam style, all that type of shit where you can just make your guy dance and after you killing somebody just to like taunt them. And then there's like different weapons and stuff, but they don't do anything. They're basically just for aesthetic purposes. And it's funny you bring up like the in-game currencies because I sort of grew up playing this. I don't know if you heard of RuneScape.
No.
I played, dude. RuneScape came out in like 1999, and they introduced this thing in like the mid 2000s called the Grand Exchange, which is basically a giant like inter marketplace where you can buy pretty much any item in the game, and it created its own like economy in the game. And then people started like buying and selling gold in the game for real money, and started buying and selling like real products for in-game stuff. They try to discourage it. They say it's like illegal in the game. You'll get banned if you're found to be doing it. But dude, read if you want interesting like I guess early stages of crypto, the RuneScape internet like the Grand Exchange is fascinating with all of that.
Well, so I mean, like, I remember a few years ago because naturally I played Pokemon Go. Like, okay, Pokemon Go has its own in game currency. You
Mm-hmm.
exchange US dollars or whatever for the Poke coins, I guess they call them. And then you progress throughout the game. But I mean, in parallel with that, there ended up becoming this like black market where you would get like, there's actually hilarious videos of this. There's like one little Japanese guy, he's riding a bike and he has this wacky gizmo setup on his bike handles that literally has like 80 different iPhones, each with a different Pokemon account. It's hilarious. I
Jesus
don't know.
Christ.
We gotta see if we can pull up the video, but he's got like, I don't know, maybe not 80, but like 30 or 40 different phones, and they each have their own new Pokemon device. And the guy would like be on his bike riding around Tokyo trying to catch all of the rare Pokemon. And he would then turn around and sell that account for hundreds and hundreds of dollars to somebody that wanted a Snorlax or some bullshit like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. And like, what I don't understand is why some of the gaming companies haven't figured out. I mean, and it might be just because of regulatory issues, because I mean, there's a lot of scrutiny around issuing your own coin. Like, for instance, the US SEC will come after you if they believe that you issued a security, because we don't have to get into that on this episode. We'll do regulation on another one. I don't want to talk about it and get frustrated. I'll just get redder than I already am. But I don't understand why the video game companies haven't figured that out, because you could effectively create your own in-game circular and cyclical economy. Maybe it's a question of integrating cryptographic technology into it, but at the end of the day, you don't even need crypto. You could just have this as an enclosed financial system based on, I don't know, a ledger that you implement into the game, right?
Yeah. I mean, that sounds a lot like what I was talking about with RuneScape. I'm telling you, man, look into that. It's insane. And I think the same thing sort of exists in World of Warcraft now. I played that in like high school for a little bit amount of time, just because like, I had a friend who was like, I don't know, ranked or some shit. And then this goes back to your thing.
Wow.
He got paid to play this game, and like oh yeah, dude. It was in college, not high school. So in college, he would have like this weird like clock where he would be awake all night playing WoW, and he would get like sponsored by some, I don't know. His desk was covered in Monster Energy drinks. His back shelf was covered in Jack Daniel's bottles, and he would just like destroy pizzas at like 3 a.m. playing WoW and doing whatever. That's the only reason I started playing it, because he would basically take me through all the dungeons, and within like a week I had all like this pimped out gear and stuff, and
so where did you go wrong? Where did you go wrong in life that you didn't make money off of this like he did?
I had parents that were like, "Oh, video games will never pay the bills." I'm like, "Go." Now I look at them and I'm like, I could have been a pro Guitar Hero player And now I'm sitting here, I'm in my goddamn basement.
Yeah, like, kid crying upstairs. It sounds horrible.
Well, I mean, I would probably still have a kid, but you know, he would be crying upstairs, swimming in a pool of coins like Scrooge McDuck. You know?
I mean, it's kind of crazy. Like, I think it's the number one YouTube channel is that Mr. Beast guy.
I don't get him. I don't know why did he become popular? Was it gaming?
I think it was gaming. I could be wrong with that. Or like, maybe I am wrong with that, but I think it was gaming at first. Like, he was one of the guys that would like do competitive gaming. He was like the who's the Swedish one? The PewDiePie, I think is.
Oh yeah. I know him. Yeah, and I know like Ninja because he was on The Masked Singer. But like, I don't know. The Mr. Beast thing, I was just thinking about the other day. Like, I see all these videos of him giving away all this money. I'm like, okay, so I get that's why people watch now because they want to see like 300 people sit in a shrinking circle the longest to see you can win $1 million. But how did he get to that point? So it makes sense. People watched him play Tetris or some shit. I don't know. Well, that's the gradual progression, right?
They're actually making a movie about the making of Tetris now, which somehow is tied to some like Russian conspiracy theory, like everything nowadays is. Have you seen the trailer for that yet?
I heard about a Tetris movie coming out, and I was like, okay, what is it? Just a bunch of blocks falling? But no, I didn't know that. It makes sense, though. I always thought it was from Russia because of the music, and like if you go play the Tetris arcade game, it's literally like a picture of like St. Basil's Cathedral, which I think is in Moscow, right? I'm going to look that up right now.
I only know the Kremlin in Moscow. I don't know what the names of their churches are.
Yeah, so if you think of like, what do you think of when you see like Russia? You think of those like that big like weird spherical like church, right? Like
like the Orthodox churches.
That's what it is. That's St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow. So that's I think that was on I think that was on the cover of Tetris. And the only reason I know what that is from a video game too. Is from playing any of the Civilization games. You ever play those? Those are pretty sweet.
Nah. No, I never played Civilization. I mean, the only that was a computer game, right?
Yeah, it's a PC game, like a turn-based, like almost like Risk, like strategy game where you like build a civilization.
No, I never did that.
That's a lot of fun. If you're looking for games to play, that's like, it's awesome.
So, I mean, is that anything like Age of Empires?
Kind of, except it's turn-based rather than like real-time.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have to put that on my list of to-dos. But, I mean, I don't think I'm going to have anything to do over the next month but play Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, that comes out on Friday. I mean, just a couple of days away from this recording. And I'm basically just going to be pieced out. I don't know if we're going to be able to do a recording for next week.
You just have it on one screen, and you can just be playing, be like, hey, yeah, so we're interviewing Dick guy here. What's and you know, just talk, and I'll handle the recording. It'll be fine.
All right, we'll try. Give that a try. I mean, so
have you seen any of the gameplay from Tears of the Kingdom yet? I was watching this video that kind of highlighted everything, and there's some interesting, I think, developments of what they're putting in here.
So I have a complete apology to make for any offense I may have ever given anybody that watched other people play video games. Because I, for the last month or so, have basically just absorbed any trailers, content leaks, conspiracy theories, or whatever. Like, I've been trying to avoid the leaks because I don't want the story or anything to be spoiled for me, which I've learned is basically impossible to kind of do if you look up Tears of the Kingdom stuff on the YouTube. But I mean, I can't stop absorbing this stuff. Like, I started following this guy. He's got a YouTube channel. He's called Zeltic. And I think I only started following him because he's got a really cool British accent.
Most of these guys do.
I don't know. There is an advantage to having a real proper accent and being a content provider. Like, you and I might just be screwed from the get-go because we have boring American accents. I don't know. Do you think you can start talking a British accent for our show?
I mean, which dialect? There's all sorts. You want to do like in a Manchester? Good day. Here we are talking about Tears of the Kingdom, lad. It's a real boss game coming out in May 2023. That's like your Manchester accent.
Okay, I don't even know what the differences are. I just know that if I ever get outside of London, it's impossible to understand anybody in Britain.
There's like a few different like strings of dialect that I can tell the difference between, but I can't do them. But no, I think you're right though. Having like a British accent. I was thinking about this the other day. I listened to Jim Jeffries, who's a comedian. His podcast is hilarious.
Oh, he's hysterical.
it's so much better because he's Australian. He sounds like it's like David Attenborough, like narrating all your videos. It's like I'm watching Planet Earth, but no, I'm watching some nerd play Zelda. You know?
So anyways, I started following him, and he does all these videos, and like Nintendo brought him in to do like an hour of gameplay, and like they severely regulated the shit that he was playing. But I mean, like it just looks phenomenal. Like, so first off, it looks like, so they're using like the original world of Hyrule, which was like groundbreaking, because it was like one of the largest open world maps, which I only just learned what that is recently, ever created. But they also have these like sky island things. So like half of the country is now floating up in the sky. And like they haven't shown anything like this, but people are hypothesizing that like because half of the world is now floating in the sky, that there's a lot of underground that you get to explore as well. So it's basically like a 3-level map. And then like all the different functionality, like basically what they did, and I think this is absolutely brilliant. They developed a mechanic in the game that allows you to fuse any item together or any weapons together, and it completely changes the nature of the weapon or the item. And you can build cars, you can build planes, you can build. There was one clip that showed Link like riding in on a tank going to war with a whole bunch of like little red bad guys. It was hilarious.
I saw that too. I think that's phenomenal too because that adds to a replayability factor as well, where you can do the game over and over again and sort of customize different ways to kill enemies or like beat bosses, which, I mean, anytime you can add that level of not just like gameplay, but creativity to it, where you can like combine, fuse stuff together to to serve a purpose, that I think just only adds to the game. And like the more freeform it is, the better.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. So that's actually one of the things that I hated at first about Breath of the Wild, because it was like, I don't know what to do next. I'm used to a linear progression. There's a story, and then I kind of follow it, and then you play the game. Like my biggest anxiety when I was playing Breath of the Wild was like, I would go to Kakariko Village, and I was like running around doing these different side quests and things. And I felt like I had to speak to all of the NPCs and run into every building and check every corner, or else I wasn't supposed to move past that part of the game, you know? But they kind of threw that formula out entirely, where they're favoring more that flexibility, more that repeatability, that you can just do the same thing in different ways. You can play the same game in 1,000 different ways. Instead of going right, you go left. Instead of going to the ice mountain, you go to the desert. I mean, it was just absolutely fascinating the way that they intertwined freedom with a story that kind of made sense, you know? But it was very frustrating. It was frustrating when I didn't know how to do it at first.
Oh, yeah. Zelda kind of has always done that. I don't know if you ever played like Link to the Past. That was on Super Nintendo. Nah. But basically, you're trying to like recombine the Triforce, and you have to go get the 3 pendants in like these 3 different castles. And you have to do those 3 things, but really you can choose what order you do them in. So they've always kind of, I think, been ahead of the curve in terms of trying to like have you beat the game, but also choosing your own destiny. So I think they've done a good job with that over the years too. And that game came out probably in like the early 90s. That's a great one too. If you get like an emulator and get like a Super Nintendo emulator and play that one, it's tremendous.
What's an emulator?
So basically an emulator is like something you can download that mimics like a game system on your computer.
Oh, I know what, you can download the game. And then you can download and play the old games?
Yeah. There's all sorts of different emulators for every game system now. Like when I was a kid, I had one for like Nintendo. So I'd go back and probably not, but
okay. Whatever. We're for punks now.
Yeah, dude. I've been pirating Super Nintendo games since I was 10. I think there's a statute of limitations there, right? So I can't get arrested for saying that.
I don't know if that counts when you admit to the crime.
Well, let's go. I'm in a character. I'm playing my internet pirate character, Bones the pirate. So we can have
with the Manchester accent.
Oh, Bones the pirate. Let's have the Samara legal team scrub that one. I don't.
Samara's not covering your ass for this.
Well, I plead the 5th then.
There you go. So let me ask you this: what was I mean, it sounds like you have significant more experience with this than I do. Obviously, I mean, what were your top? Like, what would be your top 5 or top 10 video games right now?
Right now or ever?
Uh, why don't we start with right now? What are your favorite games right now? Like, I have a Nintendo Switch. What should I go out and try to play later?
So I have a lot of weird tastes. So my favorite game series right now that's still putting out new stuff is the Resident Evil series, which I don't know if are you into like horror based video games?
So I've never played. Like, I literally started from scratch. I've played the bright, colorful world of Zelda, and I've caught little critters in Pokemon.
So no, this is pretty.
I mean, I'd give it a try. I've never played a game like that before, but
So they've sort of evolved over the years. Resident Evil, the first one and the second one, were more of like a survival based game where you have very scarce, limited resources, and you're basically trying to, in the first one, escape this mansion that's infested with zombies. In the second game, you're trying to like escape Raccoon City that's infested by zombies and other monsters. But over the course of the game, it's sort of evolved into, or course of the series, it's evolved into more like an action-based game, like Resident Evil 4, which they put a remake out of the PS2 version. That's what I'm playing right now. It's phenomenal. You're going through like Spain trying to rescue the president's daughter. She's been kidnapped by this cult, and there's more to the story than that. But that is probably my favorite game series now because those have evolved into sort of spanning not just the zombie genre, but they've got all sorts of like bug horror, like mutation horror of like mutants. And even in the last Resident Evil 7 and 8, they switched to like a first person shooter type game that switched to more like body horror in Resident Evil 7 with these like weird mold creatures. Reminiscent of almost like The Thing back in, you ever see that movie, 1982, with the John Carpenter movie?
oh yeah, that's one of the best movies out there.
It sort of reminded me of that with like the way that the people like get transformed into like these mold creatures. And then the Resident Evil 8 was Resident Evil Village. It sort of covered like almost a sort of like classic horror type stuff where there's vampires, there's like sea creatures, there's there's like dolls, in fact, like it's crazy, the whole thing.
Like, so like killer dolls, like that just sounds horrifying.
It is. So they put out Resident Evil Village and they put out DLC, like an expanding of the game, and that level is easily the scariest level in both games. It's
so I remember
terrifying.
I was many years ago. It was like back in high school, maybe. A girl I was dating at the time. We went back and we went to my family in Pittsburgh. My mom's side of the family, they all come from coal country, Pittsburgh, Beaver County, right? So we go back there and it's coal mining country. I mean, it's all run down. Naturally, the coal mines just aren't there anymore. The steel mills aren't there. And my aunt, God rest her soul, she used to be a collector of dolls. And the guest room that this poor girl had to stay in had like 50 freaking like porcelain, like crazy doll things in. I remember, yeah, and like we hadn't just started dating. We had been together maybe about a year or so, but like she still hadn't exactly found her place with our family, right? And I remember she came out and she was like, "So can I sleep in a different room?" Because she was not going to sleep in there. Like it was just so horrifying.
I don't blame her, man.
Dude, like those things definitely come alive at night. I don't care. I've seen Toy Story. I know how that shit works.
Yeah, my that's one of the things my son is obsessed with now is Toy Story. He's like, he gets like a new doll. He's like not sure of it. He's like, Buzz alive. I'm like, oh shit. Okay, well, we can leave Buzz down here.
So who knows what he's saying? Had an unintended scarring consequence on all of us.
Yeah, I agree.
Freaking Woody.
But that's like the game I spend most of the time playing right now. That series, Resident Evil 4, is the newest like installation of that, but they're remaking sort of all the classic games. And that really, I don't know how they're going to remake the fifth one Beyond because those didn't come out too long ago. Mm-hmm. But that series kicks ass. The other game I play all the time, I told you, is that Civilization 6. And that's sort of like just like a time killer.
That's a PC game, right?
It's PC. My brother had it on his Switch, though, so I know that they released it on multi-platforms. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's fun. You basically can choose your civilization. They have a long list of, you have like ancient Rome, Egypt, Sumeria, Greece. They have America, too. You play as Teddy Roosevelt's like your leader. And you basically each civilization has like pros of like there's different ways to win, like science victories, like launching a moon landing. There's cultural victories, like boosting your culture. There's diplomatic victories. There's domination victories, where if you're like a war-based civilization, like they have the Mongols, like Genghis Khan in there. They have Attila the Hun in some of the older games. Like you can go and just dominate the world.
So is it like a one-player game, or you said it was turns-based? Do you have to be connected to the internet, because that won't work for me if I'm on a plane?
No, I play it most of the time as single player, but there is a multiplayer like version of it where you can go up against other people online. But most of the time I play is just like me versus the computer, and there's different difficulty settings.
So let me ask you this. So then, those are your favorite games now. What's your favorite game of all time?
All time, my favorite games are the Final Fantasy series. Those are like our RPGs, sort of like the open world thing. Final Fantasy VII being my favorite. That game came out in I think 1997. A lot of people view that as one of, if not the greatest video game of all time, just due to its sort of massive world of different characters and side quests, things you don't even have to do, but you can do to get you like special weapons or special, like they have like things called like materia, which give you either magic or summon creatures to help you progress through the game. There's there's characters that you can unlock that aren't even like pivotal to the game. You can do all their side stories and things like that. They've started to make remakes of that, but the game was so like big. It was 3 discs on PlayStation, and trying to enhance that into like.
But PlayStation only had like one. I mean, so 3 discs, like you just progress through the story, and each disc is a different part.
So like you get to like the first chapter basically is on disc 1. You get to the end of the chapter, it says please insert disc 2 to continue.
So it's basically like insert the second half of Titanic to see.
Pretty much. Those are the only games I've seen that with. I know there's been other games that have multiple discs, but it's basically like the one I'm thinking of is Resident Evil 2 had 2 discs, but there were 2 different storylines. This is like one continuous storyline throughout the game. I'm sure there's a lot more than that, just not games that I played growing up. But they've started to remake that for like PS5 and PS4, and they released the first one, and I was so excited for it. They released the first one like a year or 2 ago, or maybe 3 years ago at this point. And it was not even like the first quarter of disc 1. So the fact that it was such a big game with such bad, those like awful graphics, which at the time they were phenomenal. They're trying to remake that into this like PS5 game. It's going to be like, they're going to have to release just pieces of it, just to make up for how like open the world is and how much different stuff there is to do. It's crazy. But that game is my favorite.
I mean, because like eventually, like we're kind of hitting a point, and I've only started to learn about this as a problem for the Zelda game. Like, I mean, I look at the Nintendo Switch and I'm like, wow, these graphics are freaking amazing. Apparently by today's gaming standards, like, okay, fine, they work because they're like more artsy to a certain extent, but the reason they're more artsy is because the Switch and the rendering it has just sucks. Like I recently learned what FPS means. So it's 30 frames per second, right?
If you get more into gaming, that's critical, dude. Like I play games now, like that Elden Ring game. If you're 30 FPS, you're toast.
So like, what do you need? Like 100 FPS? Like I don't know this shit.
I think mine defaults to 60, but I have like I don't know what the different types of things. I'm not that much of a gamer. I just know 30 is like you're not getting that resolution you need because there's such like quick movements and stuff. Like you're going to start watching like blurs moving across your screen.
Yeah, like I tried to download even Age of Empires 3 on my computer. And like I don't have a gaming computer by any means. It's a normal PC. I use it mostly for personal and work stuff, right? The most I've ever used a computer for is like a gigantic gigabyte Excel file, right? And Age of Empires 3, a game from like 15 years ago, wouldn't work on this computer because the frame, like the pictures just kept dropping out. So like it seems like we're getting to a point where the hardware is not meeting what developers are able to build from a game perspective.
I think it's been that way for a while. I mean, recently it's been that, the GPUs, which are like your video processors, like basically your graphics cards, they've gotten to such a point where I'm running like an NVIDIA 3070, and I think it's pretty powerful, but I think the most recent release is like a 4060, So like you think about how they release the
I actually know what you're talking about right now because those GPUs could be mined or could be used to mine crypto.
Right. Yeah. So that's why I think that's part of the reason why they're so expensive now, and like the chip shortage for like probably like the war over there, because I think a lot of the minerals that they use to create these processors are come from Ukraine and Russia in that area. So I think that's driving up the price too. But I think the developers and like NVIDIA or AMD, like your big graphics card makers, probably work hand in hand to make sure that they're not like lapping each other. I think they're sort of almost in cahoots trying to make sure that the technologies don't get too advanced, like where they can't keep up with the developers. The developers can't create games that meet the processing power of these processors. So I don't know. But you're right to an extent.
I mean, basically, my takeaway from that is that crypto miners are killing the ability for hardware producers to keep up with the games that are being developed.
Well, or you just got to start mining some comets, like in that one movie. Get some more minerals that we can make stronger processors.
I hear unobtainium would work really well.
Yeah, unobtainium sounds great, or vibranium too. We could get Captain America's shield and start making video games out of it.
There we go. Well, so I'm really happy we're able to do this more fun podcast today. I mean, that's part of the stuff that I'm hoping that we'll be able to do with this because, I mean, unfortunately, our next interview is going to be with a compliance guy.
Oh, God.
I know. I mean, let me tell you about this. So in Europe, they recently passed an overarching regulatory framework for crypto. I haven't told you who we're bringing on. He's a compliance guy. He works for one of the companies I found at Deutsche Digital Assets. And we're going to have him on and talk about European compliance for crypto. So I figured you were going to hate that one. No. So that's why I figured we should do something fun here.
No, I'm into accounting. I have to do SOX audits every year. I love compliance. I am compliant, as a matter of fact. Don't at all look into my financial statements.
Very good. Well, Matt, thanks for taking the time today. We'll jump on in a couple of days with Dimitri to talk European regulatory compliance of crypto.
Very similar to Tears of the Kingdom, except it'll be Tears of the Me, where I'm crying the entire time.
It won't be that boring, I promise. Have a good one, bro.
I'm just kidding. Take care now.
Bye-bye then.